This video series concerns George Orwell's 1984. I will be using this very handsome Everyman's Library edition. 1984 is one of the most famous books of the 20th century. Some of its words and concepts have made their way into our language. We talk about Big Brother watching, and we talk about doublespeak or thought crimes. These are both Orwellian terms. Even the word Orwellian comes from this book. Orwell himself was a socialist of sorts, but his last two works, Animal Farm in the mid-1940s and 1984, was published in the after 1948 or so, and they show that Orwell was concerned about the rise of totalitarianism in modern countries. By totalitarianism, he seems to have meant a government or a ruling junta who try to control not only the actions but also the thoughts of its citizens. He worried about the increasing threat of totalitarianism. He saw its rise in Nazi Germany. He saw it even more dangerously and successfully implemented in the Soviet Union. But he also recognized that there was a threat within Western culture itself. He thought the increasing domination of human life by machinery presented a threat to human flourishing and certainly to human freedom. And as Orwell was preparing to write 1984, he read a classic book by an American, James Burnham, called The Managerial Revolution. Burnham worried in that book that a new managerial class was rising in all the Western nations, and this new class would rise in government and education and corporations, and then they would make the world to conform to their own image. They would invent a language, and they would master that language and impose it on the rest of society. Language represented their rule. They would rule the world for their own interests, but always under the cover of ruling for the public good. They would think of their ways as the most virtuous, and the many who lived under them would be thought of as subhuman. It is no short road from the world of Burnham's analysis to the world of Orwell's party of Big Brother. So Orwell was not simply concerned about what we would call normal totalitarian temptations of a Stalin. He worries about the Gulag, but thinks that the Gulag can come to society as a whole. He was worried about the rise of social tyranny with a managerial class at the top, a rule secured by a party through their control of public opinion, as much as he worried about Stalin coming to America or England. Orwell was asked what he thought the chances of such a society arising shortly before his death. He died a year or so after 1984 was published. And Orwell said this: "I do not believe that the kind of society I describe will arrive, but I believe that something resembling it could arrive." That's not very definite, is it? We have the benefit of watching the managerial elite and thus judging their actions against what Orwell expected. Do we have memory holes and thought crimes? It is something to ponder. With such concerns, Orwell appears to be a critic of socialism of a deeper sort. The word socialism comes down to us as a series of policies, including most importantly the state control over major industries. In the English context, socialism also stands for maintaining the empire, trying to get rid of the empire and releasing the dominions from the control of the crown. It stands for a vague pacifism. Orwell may indeed have maintained a commitment to socialism so understood as a set of policies. But there is a deeper and longer history of socialism that Orwell clearly opposes. This is a philosophical brand of socialism, which you can learn about in my video series on Chernyshevsky's What is to be Done. In this deeper sense, socialism means the view that human beings or human nature is an empty vessel or a blank slate into which a party or a political community can pour meaning. Human beings are defined decisively by their society. What their society tells them to think and to honor and to do, the citizens will think and honor and do. No innate psychological tendencies exist, no real sex differences, no thirst for justice or righteousness, no sexual longing or eros. Anything that you think exists by nature can be eradicated with proper education or proper indoctrination. Thus, the original socialism means that society defines the human. The policies of socialism, socialism on a smaller scale, followed from this assumption. The reason the state was supposed to take over the industries was so that industry would be organized to promote the human good or the good human. Militarism caused bad human patriotism. Socialism always promises a new man, and this new man, socialists seem to think, will be a better man. Orwell is a deep and perceptive critic of this view that you can create a new man. 1984 is a glimpse into what it would take to do that. Everything that the party in 1984 does to create this new man is aimed at an aspect of human life or human nature that seems to stand in the way. So I think it is a facile observation to say that Orwell was always a socialist. This book is a big-time takedown of socialism, broadly and deeply understood. Let me say a few other things in this direction. Many people on the political left considered Orwell, the Orwell who wrote these last books, to be a traitor. Not only had Orwell turned against Stalin, but more deeply, his book seems to lend credence to Christianity. But Orwell was no believer. Part of being a small-time socialist is opposition to the church. But his opposition to socialism puts him in league with the Christians, at least in part. His attempt to defend the durability of human nature with all its virtues and vices aligns him with Christianity. His idea that there is no way to bring human perfection on earth is also aligned with Christianity. As we go through 1984, it is interesting to ask why Orwell thinks socialism, broadly understood, is a dead end. Why does he think aspects of human nature are permanent? Christians have creation. What does Orwell have? Dostoevsky had the fall. What does Orwell have? These questions will linger in the background. 1984 is a great book. It may not be about a permanent human problem, but it deeply concerns a modern problem. We would not use words like Orwellian or Big Brother or Newspeak or thought crime unless Orwell himself had diagnosed a significant problem or tendency in the late modern world. Our goal will be to understand the roles that these concepts play in the society that Orwell imagines. 1984, the novel, comes to us in 3 parts. Part 1 is the description of this totalitarian regime from the perspective of Winston Smith, a person capable of some independent thinking, who tries to give an account of how it all works. We see how it works through his eyes, so the picture is incomplete. Part 2 concerns the rebellion of Winston and his lover, Julia, neither of whom are completely on board with the way the society is going. Their rebellion starts as a love affair, and it ends with their seduction by a fake revolutionary group. The party has lured them into a trap, and they are caught at the end of Part 2. Part 3 is the torture of Winston Smith, so that by the end of the novel, he loves the party and all it stands for. He loves Big Brother. So the long arc of the novel is the birth of a rebel and his conquest. I will attempt to give you a political science of this particular regime through Winston's eyes, and this is where we will begin in the next video.